Lucien Draay, a complex and multifaceted figure within the cultural and artistic landscapes of the Star Wars universe, represents a character whose choices and philosophies invite deep critical analysis. As a Jedi Master during the Old Republic era, Draay's narrative arc highlights the tension between duty, morality, and personal ambition, making him an intriguing subject for reflection on the nature of power and responsibility. His actions, particularly those involving the Jedi Covenant, serve as a lens through which to examine broader themes of corruption, idealism, and the fallibility of institutions. At the core of Draay's character lies his role as the scion of a prestigious Jedi lineage, which he seeks to uphold with an almost obsessive dedication. This devotion to legacy is both his greatest strength and his undoing, as it blinds him to the nuances of individual choice and the unpredictable nature of destiny. Draay's perception of the Force and its guidance skews toward determinism, often manifesting in actions that reveal a rigid and authoritarian streak. He is a character who operates within the framework of an institution that champions freedom and justice, yet he frequently subverts these principles in his pursuit of what he believes to be the greater good. This contradiction makes him a compelling figure, as his apparent sincerity is undermined by his willingness to engage in morally ambiguous acts. The Jedi Covenant, of which Draay is a leading figure, exemplifies his conflicted ideology. Ostensibly formed to protect the galaxy from Sith resurgence, the Covenant operates in secret, employing extreme measures to eliminate perceived threats before they manifest. This preemptive philosophy echoes real-world debates about security versus liberty, where the fear of potential danger justifies invasive or violent actions. Draay's complicity in the Covenant's activities, particularly its reliance on visions of the future to identify and neutralize supposed threats, underscores his prioritization of order over individual rights. The reliance on prophecy as an infallible guide is especially problematic, as it raises questions about the ethics of acting on knowledge that is inherently uncertain. Draay's unshakable faith in these visions not only isolates him from alternative perspectives but also catalyzes some of his most questionable decisions. One of the most pivotal moments in Draay's story is his involvement in the massacre of the Padawan Zane Carrick. Convinced by a shared vision that Carrick would bring about a cataclysmic event, Draay and the Covenant conspire to kill him and other Padawans to prevent this perceived future. This act of betrayal starkly contrasts with the Jedi Code's emphasis on compassion and protection, highlighting the extent to which Draay is willing to compromise foundational principles in pursuit of his mission. The massacre's fallout is not only a narrative turning point, but also a moment of profound thematic significance, as it illuminates the dangers of unaccountable power and the moral erosion that can occur when fear overrides principle. Draay's relationship with Carrick, who survives the massacre and becomes a thorn in the Covenant's side, adds another layer of complexity to his character. Carrick embodies the qualities Draay ostensibly values: resilience, ingenuity, and a commitment to justice. Yet Draay views him as an existential threat rather than a kindred spirit. This dynamic invites a deeper exploration of Draay's psyche, as his inability to reconcile his fears with the reality of Carrick's actions reflects a broader struggle within the Jedi Order itself. The Order's hierarchical structure and emphasis on conformity often stifle dissenting voices, creating an environment where figures like Draay can rationalize their extreme measures as necessary evils. The tension between Draay and Carrick, therefore, becomes a microcosm of the larger ideological conflicts that plague the Jedi Order during this period. Another crucial aspect of Draay's characterization is his relationship with the Force. Unlike many of his contemporaries, who emphasize the importance of balance and humility, Draay approaches the Force as a tool to be mastered and directed. This perspective aligns him more closely with the Sith than he might care to admit, as it reflects a desire for control that is fundamentally at odds with the Jedi's teachings. Draay's fixation on shaping the future according to his visions reveals a hubristic streak that blinds him to the natural ebb and flow of the Force. By attempting to impose his will upon the galaxy, he inadvertently contributes to the very chaos he seeks to prevent, underscoring the dangers of overreach and the limits of human or Jedi foresight. The physical and symbolic settings in which Draay operates also contribute to the richness of his characterization. His connection to Taris, a planet with a fraught history and a stratified society, mirrors his own internal conflicts and the hierarchical nature of the Jedi Order. Tauri's destruction during later events in the Star Wars timeline adds a tragic dimension to Draay's story, as it underscores the impermanence of the structures he sought to preserve. Similarly, his ties to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, a symbol of the Order's grandeur and its flaws, highlight the duality of his position as both a servant and a critic of institutional power. These locations serve as more than mere backdrops. They function as extensions of Draay's character, reflecting his aspirations, failures, and ultimate legacy. While Draay's actions often place him in opposition to traditional heroism, it is important to recognize the sincerity of his intentions. Unlike overtly malevolent figures, Draay does not act out of malice or self-interest, but rather from a misguided belief that he is safeguarding the greater good. This distinction is crucial, as it positions him as a tragic figure whose downfall stems not from inherent evil but from the flaws in his ideology. His story serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of absolutism and the ethical dilemmas that arise when noble intentions are pursued through ignoble means. At the same time, Draay's arc invites reflection on the broader dynamics of the Star Wars universe, particularly the cyclical nature of conflict and the fragility of institutions. The Jedi Order, for all its virtues, is depicted as an organization prone to rigidity and internal contradictions, and Draay's story exemplifies these flaws. His rise and fall echo the struggles of other Jedi who grapple with the tension between personal conviction and institutional loyalty, making him a figure whose legacy resonates far beyond his immediate narrative. By exploring the moral and philosophical challenges he faces, Draay's story encourages audiences to question the binary distinctions between heroism and villainy, shedding light on the complexities of human and Jedi nature. In analyzing Draay's character and actions, it becomes clear that his story is not just one of personal failure but also of systemic dysfunction. The Jedi Covenant's secrecy and lack of accountability mirror the broader weaknesses of the Jedi Order, which often struggles to adapt to changing circumstances or acknowledge its own shortcomings. Draay's ultimate fate, whatever its specifics, can be seen as a reflection of the consequences of these systemic issues, as well as a commentary on the dangers of placing too much faith in institutions or individuals to safeguard the future. The legacy of Lucien Draay is thus a multifaceted one, encompassing themes of ambition, idealism, and the ethical complexities of power. His story challenges audiences to grapple with uncomfortable questions about the nature of leadership and the sacrifices required to maintain order in a chaotic galaxy. By delving into his motivations, actions, and consequences, we gain not only a deeper understanding of Draay himself, but also a richer appreciation of the broader moral and philosophical currents that define the Star Wars universe. Through his character, we are reminded that the path to darkness is often paved with good intentions, and that the struggle to balance ideals with reality is one that resonates far beyond the confines of fiction. Lucien Draay's journey continues to be a prism through which the failures of rigid dogma and unchecked power can be examined. His devotion to the Jedi Covenant and its mission, while driven by a sincere desire to prevent catastrophe, serves as a stark reminder of how good intentions can lead to destructive outcomes. The weight of prophecy, a central motif in Draay's narrative, becomes a metaphor for the dangers of overconfidence in foresight and the ethical dilemmas that arise when trying to manipulate the future. In Draay's case, his unwavering trust in these prophetic visions leads him to prioritize abstract ideals over the tangible consequences of his actions, an approach that isolates him from the very people he seeks to protect. A critical element of Draay's character is his internal struggle with guilt and self-justification. While he often portrays himself as a resolute figure, unwavering in his conviction, there are subtle indications throughout his story that he is deeply conflicted. This internal discord manifests in moments of introspection, where Draay questions whether his actions truly align with the principles he claims to uphold. However, rather than confront these doubts directly, he frequently buries them beneath layers of rationalization and denial, creating a psychological tension that permeates his every decision. This reluctance to fully reckon with his own culpability not only drives his downfall but also underscores the broader theme of accountability, or the lack thereof, within hierarchical systems like the Jedi Order. Draay's interactions with other characters, particularly his fellow Covenant members, further illuminate the complexities of his moral and ethical framework. While he operates as a leader within the Covenant, his relationships with his peers are often strained by differing interpretations of their mission. Some members exhibit a more pragmatic approach, willing to compromise their ideals for the sake of expedience, while others cling to a purist vision of their goals. Draay frequently positions himself as a mediator between these extremes, yet his inability to bridge these ideological divides ultimately exposes the fragility of their alliance. The fractures within the Covenant mirror Draay's own internal contradictions, creating a dynamic interplay between personal and collective failure. Moreover, Draay's strained relationship with the Jedi Council highlights the inherent flaws in the structure of the Jedi Order itself. While the Council is ostensibly the ultimate authority on Jedi conduct, its bureaucratic and often inflexible nature leaves it ill-equipped to address the clandestine activities of the Covenant. Draay's ability to operate outside the Council's oversight raises important questions about the balance between autonomy and accountability within the Jedi hierarchy. His story reveals the dangers of decentralization in a system that relies heavily on trust and moral integrity, as well as the potential for well-intentioned individuals to exploit loopholes in the name of the greater good. One of the most compelling aspects of Draay's narrative is the way it deconstructs the notion of predestination. The Jedi Covenant's reliance on visions of the future serves as a critique of deterministic thinking, as it exposes the pitfalls of treating prophecy as an immutable truth. Draay's fixation on preventing a prophesied disaster blinds him to the possibility that his actions might bring about the very outcomes he seeks to avoid. This paradox highlights the fallibility of interpreting the future through a lens of fear and control, and it reinforces the idea that ethical decision-making requires humility and adaptability rather than certainty. Draay's failure to embrace this perspective ultimately leads to his undoing, as his dogmatic adherence to prophecy alienates him from his allies and accelerates his descent into moral ambiguity. Draay's visual and symbolic presentation also contributes to the richness of his characterization. The imagery associated with him, his somber robes, his severe demeanor, and the imposing architecture of his surroundings, reflects the weight of his responsibilities and the isolation that comes with them. These elements combine to create an atmosphere of solemnity and foreboding, emphasizing the tragic dimensions of his story. At the same time, Draay's physical presence serves as a reminder of the disconnect between appearance and reality, as his outward composure often masks the turmoil and uncertainty within. This juxtaposition reinforces the theme of duality that runs throughout his narrative, as he embodies both the virtues and the flaws of the Jedi Order. In the broader context of the Star Wars universe, Draay's story resonates as a cautionary tale about the perils of absolutism and the unintended consequences of even the most well-meaning interventions. His actions demonstrate how the pursuit of a single, narrowly defined goal can lead to the neglect of broader ethical considerations, resulting in outcomes that are ultimately counterproductive. Draay's arc serves as a microcosm of the challenges faced by institutions like the Jedi Order, which must navigate the tension between upholding tradition and adapting to an ever-changing galaxy. By portraying Draay as a character who struggles and ultimately fails to reconcile these competing demands, his story invites audiences to reflect on the complexities of leadership, morality, and the human, or Jedi, condition. As the narrative reaches its culmination, Draay's legacy becomes a subject of contention. While his intentions may have been noble, his actions leave a trail of destruction and mistrust that cannot be easily reconciled. His story serves as a stark reminder of the importance of accountability and the dangers of allowing unchecked power to go unchallenged. The lessons drawn from Draay's life and choices resonate not only within the Star Wars universe but also in real-world discussions about the nature of power, the limits of foresight, and the ethical dilemmas that arise when pursuing the greater good. Through his character, we are reminded that the path to redemption is fraught with challenges, and that true heroism requires not only strength and conviction but also humility and compassion.